And welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on CBS that has said goodbye to a challenge legend. Possibly for forever? We'll have to wait and see, but I'm talking about The Challenge USA Season 2, Episode 10, and we have a lot to cover in this video, going over the double elimination, everything surrounding the double elimination, and much more. So let's start off where last episode left off, and we saw Chris winning against Survivor alum Sebastian in a trick shot elimination, and coming back to the challenge house, we see the Survivor Alliance sitting down Chris, kind of confronting him, being like, what the heck, dude? Get yourself in check. You were completely out of control last week trying to save your own behind, and now you are in murky water with your own Survivor Alliance. And Chris apologizes, knows what he did wrong, but this far into the game and you're having this many problems with your own alliance members, it's going to be a tough uphill battle for Chris moving forward. The next morning, we have Josh and Wes in a conversation around the gym area where Josh is talking nonstop about the finals. At the end of last week's episode, TJ was talking about how the finals is so close. And Josh, who has never made a finals, that's all he could think about. Finals fever he has. And he is talking about Wes about making it to the finals. He really wants to make it to the finals. And Wes is like, let's calm down with all the finals talk because there's still a lot of game left to be played. This is where we have a confessional from Josh, basically saying that he knows if he makes it to the finals, running alongside Wes, he has no shot to win. And then we have a confessional from Wes saying that Josh needs to calm down and that we will never be rivals. And that is very foreshadowing of things to come later on in this episode. But speaking of more game to be played, everybody dons their challenge gear, meets up with TJ around a body of water for a heights over water daily challenge called Go the Distance. It's very simple. There are 5 hanging batons. Every heat, everybody's gonna try to jump and grab onto a baton. If in a round you miss a baton, you are out of the game. But if you grab a baton, you're moving on to the next round. And the last man and woman standing in their heat will win into power, win into safety, and this is very important this week because there is a double elimination, meaning whoever wins into power, whoever they nominate, is for sure 100% going into the elimination this episode. Now, this is a very simple challenge. You run, you jump, you try to grab a baton, and you win. Or you don't. I just find it funny because thinking of like Survivor, this is like one aspect of their water obstacle course that they have every single season at this point, where players have to do a full obstacle course, but at a certain point they have to like get up on this big rig and then jump to grab a hanging key and then swim to the next task in that obstacle course. The challenge and the people coming up for these daily challenges was like, yeah, we should do that, but that should be the whole challenge. Again, very simple. Not saying it was bad. I liked how it was filmed. I liked how it was edited. It was actually pretty interesting to watch throughout, and it was easy to comprehend each round who was in and who was out. The women are up first, and in the first 2 rounds, 4 women were eliminated, and that was Alyssa, Chanel, Cassidy, and Michelle. Now, the 2 players that kind of scream out to me is Chanel and Michelle. Michelle was the first one to jump and completely whiffed. Chanel has proven that trying to jump and grab things that are hanging are not her thing. You know, she talked about rebounding the last episode before jumping on the trampoline to try to grab the hanging flags, yet she grabbed like 1 point. She fell flat last episode in the second phase, and she fell flat this episode in round 1. Going into round 3, we have Tori, Desi, and Michaela as the only 3 people left in their heat. Tori doesn't grab a baton in the 3rd round, and she's really leaning into the deal that she made with the Survivor players a couple of episodes prior. But this is the first time that she's going to be eligible in a solo format of possibly being sent into elimination. And then in the 4th round, Michaela, despite being very upset, we could see the fear taking over Michaela in like round 2. Michaela was very uncomfortable at just the thought of running and jumping and trying to grab a baton. Like, seeing how Michaela was affected during this challenge, I thought that this was Desi's challenge to win. Like, I didn't think Michaela was never going to jump. I thought she was always going to jump. I just didn't know if she was going to be able to really reach out and grab the batons if she was that fearful. But when it came down to it, in round 4, Desi came up short and Michaela overcame her fear and got that 4th baton. Her first challenge win in her challenge career. It was very inspirational to see Michaela be fearful, be vulnerable, and then overcome that fear in such a short period of time, as well as seeing everybody on the sidelines really pushing for her, rooting for her, trying to give her advice in between the rounds of her getting set up. It was very, very inspirational, in my opinion. Now, the men are up next, and every single man gets their baton in round 1. That is, except for one Wes Bergman, who does not get his first baton. He's the only man to whiff in round 1. And then in the second round, the only person to miss their baton is Josh. So after 2 rounds, we have both Wes and Josh on the sidelines. And then we have everybody falling in round 3 except for Fessel and Bananas. Now, right before round 4, we see Bananas and Fessel do a little handshake. And in that moment, I was thinking, Fessel's gonna win this. Bananas at this point has already won a solo challenge. We are getting so close to the finals that I feel like Bananas is like, I don't want to get my hands dirty at any point this late in the game. So when they make that handshake, and I know that Bananas says that he gave it all he could in that jump, that he really reached out for it, I just have a feeling that he wasn't giving his 100%. Fessel once again shows off his immaculate jumping abilities and is able to get his 4th baton, and Bananas comes up short, meaning the winners for this week's challenge is Michaela and Fessel. Now, coming back to the challenge house, this is where I was thinking, okay, last week, Fessel was telling Chris and Cory, oh, if only I didn't win with Tori, I would be pushing to put up either a Wes or Bananas. And now, he's sitting here next to Michaela. What will he do? If you're really wanting to make a move, this could be the week. And we even hear from Michaela talking to Desi and Chanel before heading off to the nomination ceremony to talk to Fessel. All right, I'm thinking, what about Tori? Instant alarm bells are ringing in Desi and Chanel's heads because they are thinking, okay, you nominate Tori, the whole house is going to be looking at one of us to send in against her because they are seeing us as the 2 strongest competitors outside of Michaela, who is ineligible to go into the elimination. So Desi and Chanel are now in the hot seat because the house can get together and possibly vote them in, being like, all right, one really strong woman is going into the elimination already, Tori. Why not send in another strong woman to ensure that one goes home? Desi and Chanel feels like Michaela is maybe not thinking this through, also maybe thinking more about herself than their safety in the game because sending in Tori could directly affect their game as well. Now, coming into the nomination ceremony, Michaela, who is new to this power stuff in the game, kind of defaults to hear what Fessel has to say about strategy. He says he wants to put up Chris. Chris is the easy vote. He's pissed off everybody in the house. Why not just put him in? So Michaela's like, cool, I don't care. What about the women's side? Fessel has stuck his neck out to keep Alyssa safe, but she hasn't really done anything in this game, and it's coming down to it. Why not just throw Alyssa in there? So Michaela backs off of her initial gut feeling of sending in Tori and decides to put in the safer route of Chris and Alyssa as the nominees. Now, I understand the opinion of going the safe route of Chris and Alyssa. I just feel this close going into the finals, possibly an elimination or 2 close to the finals. Big moves have to be made at certain points or you're gonna run out of time. And so, I don't know, sometimes you gotta swing big. And to me, this was a little bit of a softball layup here. Now, after the nominations come out, both Alyssa and Chris kind of separate themselves from the house. Alyssa locks herself into the bathroom. She's feeling overwhelmed. Tyler comes in, tries to help her out. Chris does the same thing in the confessional room. Cassidy and Michelle come into the room to give him a pep talk, trying to bring him up a little bit. Picking himself up, he goes and sits down with Michelle and Josh is like, who do you want to go up against? And Chris, not trying to take the easy road out here, he says, I want to take on somebody that the house is afraid to see in a final. I want either Bananas or Wes in the elimination arena. More so Wes. And I love this. I love this vibe from Chris. He's like, I want to make a statement, you know? I would rather go in against the best and either beat the best or be beaten by the best. And maybe, just maybe, this could send a message to the house being like, do not mess with me. You do not want to see me in an elimination if I'm going up against a challenge legend, a beast, somebody that you fear of seeing in the finals, and I go in one-on-one and beat them. Maybe that will take some heat off my back. Right before the secret vote, we have Alyssa and Tyler kind of making out a little bit, but then we get to the secret vote and we see the votes are kind of going every which way. We have Chris and Josh voting for Wes. We have Tyler, Michelle voting for Cassidy, Alyssa voting for Bananas, and Cory voting for Tyler. Josh, as I said, voted for Wes, but it came at a heavy heart. Josh was crying. Speaking of the votes, we meet up with TJ at the arena where we see the full votes. For the men's votes, we have 3 votes for Wes, 7 for Tyler, 2 for Bananas, and we instantly see like Wes going, who was that third vote? I'm guessing Wes knew that Chris and Cassidy voted for him, but that third vote is eluding him. And for the women's side, we have 2 votes for Tori, 1 for Michelle, and 9 for Cassidy. With 9 votes, Cassidy knows that Survivor players voted for her. And now she is feeling completely alone, kind of like what Chris feels. She feels out of the loop. She feels outside of the, quote, Strong Girls Alliance. And now she is upset and she is angry. And it's a good thing that she is pissed off because she needs that anger going into this week's elimination against Alyssa as TJ pulled Cassidy's name out, as well as TJ pulls Wes's name out to go up against Chris. So in this double elimination, we have Chris versus Wes, Alyssa versus Cassidy, and Ripped Off. Players will be wearing these like onesie mechanics uniforms with patches all over them. One person will be the chaser while the other person is going to be the runner. The chaser is going to have 5 minutes to try to rip off as many patches off of the runner as possible. The person who was the chaser will then be the runner, and the other person who was the runner will be the chaser, and at the end, the player who has ripped off the most patches from their opponent will stay in this game, while the other 2 players will be eliminated. Coming into the women's elimination round, I thought that this was probably one of the better eliminations for Alyssa, especially when it came to the matchup of her going up against Cassidy. I thought that Alyssa had a pretty decent shot of coming out on top, and after her round of being a chaser, I thought that she was in a really good position, ripping off 8 of the 10 patches from Cassidy. And then in round 2, with Cassidy being the chaser, Alyssa was doing a great job keeping Cassidy at bay, keeping away from her. And then all of a sudden, there was a late surge by Cassidy to start ripping off patches, keeping Alyssa close, and she was able to get 1 more patch off of Alyssa than she did Cassidy. So at the end of the day, Cassidy wins this by only 1 patch. And so Cassidy is able to win this, stay in the game, and not only that, but when she's standing back in line and TJ is like, how you feeling, Cassidy, about winning? She's like, I came down here, proved myself yet again, while there's other people back in line who voted for me, who discredits me, and they haven't even come down here once to prove themselves, which was a very passive-aggressive way to call out Chanel. There's no doubt about it that she was calling out Chanel. Michaela has already been down there. Desi has already been down there. Michelle's already been down there. That only leaves 1 person. Very interesting. I love the fire coming from Cassidy. Let's see if she can back it up next episode. But now let's get to the men's elimination round, and we have Chris versus Wes. Now, Wes, we've seen done some pretty impressive wire work back in All-Stars 3 against Yes. I thought that this could be kind of in Wes's wheelhouse, even though Chris is taller and I think is a little bit lankier. If you're Wes, you're thinking, I'm in the best position possible. You get 9 patches off of your opponent. I got this in the bag. All I have to do is just stay away from Chris or just waste a little bit more time than he did, and I'm good, you know? That's what I was thinking. 9 patches. I think 9 out of 10 times, if you rip off 9 patches, you're winning the elimination. Well, too bad that this is the 1 out of 10th time, because when Chris was the chaser, this is where things kind of went haywire, and I kind of blame Wes's strategy, because at a certain point, Wes was doing a good job holding on to the bar and moving really quickly and changing directions pretty easily, but there was a point where Wes kind of just like really flings himself and puts his hands up so that way Chris can't grab him and bring him in and start ripping off patches. But when Wes flung himself in the air, you lose all control. Chris turns around instantly, waits for Wes to now come to him. There's nothing Wes can do in this moment, and Chris just like sprawls out and grabs Wes with his arms and his legs to where Wes can't move at all, and Chris just starts ripping off patches as quickly as possible, and with seconds to spare. I don't necessarily believe that it was seconds to spare, but I do appreciate a clock at the bottom of the screen. But with seconds to spare, Chris was able to rip off all 10 patches from Wes's suit, meaning Chris wins, and he has sent Wes home. And not only that, but this was a point where Wes says, I'm done. I am retiring. TJ does say that if he ever wants to come back, we'll welcome you back in open arms. Just say the word and we'll put you on the next season if you want to. The ball is in Wes's court, but he says that he is done. He said it on social media that he's pretty much done. I have done an exit interview with him. That is over at patreon.com/angelcakevids, where we do talk about that. But right before that moment, things get pretty intense when Wes is like hugging everybody, and he asks Bananas, who was that third vote? And Banana says, I have no idea who that third vote was. And then he looks to Josh and goes, do you know who that third vote was? And Josh says, yes, it was me. And Josh starts to break down. He wants to hug Wes. And this is where Wes kind of shows in the edit, at least from my point of view, that he wasn't mad. He wasn't shocked. But he was almost like disappointed. And to me, that just proves that Wes already has the parenting thing down. Because there's nothing worse than when a parent says, I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed. And that leads to Wes saying in a confessional that this could be the downfall of Josh. That Josh could turn on a vet. Who else would he turn his back on? Wes kind of floats that out there as one of his last confessionals. He says goodbye to everybody and then heads out and exits the arena and exits the challenge for possibly the last time we will see him on the show, competing at least. But that is it. That's where this episode ends. We are left with 12 players left waiting to see how close they are to the finals. Last season, season 1 of the Challenge USA, 10 players made it into the finals. Will 10 players make it into this finals again? Possibly, maybe. I'm thinking around 8, but 10, there is a possibility with a couple of purges in the finals. That's what I'm thinking, but that is where we end off on this episode. What'd you think about this episode? What'd you think about the daily challenge? What'd you think about the elimination? And I want to ask you, do you think that this was the last time we'll see Wes on the challenge, at least competing? Like, I could see him coming back as a reunion or a reunion host or co-host or something like that. But I mean like on a challenge season competing. Do you think that this was the last time we will see Wes on the show? Let me know anything and everything down on the comment section below. And I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really soon with more Challenge USA 2 content, more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.